Hi, I'm Graham from MatchMedics, and welcome to our podcast, Doctor Diaries, Adventures to Ireland, where each week we have a doctor come on to tell us their own personal story about relocating to Ireland. Thank you, Conor, for coming on our podcast, Doctor Diaries, Adventures to Ireland. This episode is a little bit different because you're very clearly Irish and have gone through the medical school system here and the recently completed your internship, and now you're venturing into something within the same space but on the technical side. So I'm excited to have you on today to talk through that and talk through the change when it comes to the work environment for young doctors coming into medicine, and knowing that the old adage of being married to the job of medicine is probably something that's dying out, and you'll be quite keen to pick your brain on how you see that trend going. But over to you to introduce yourself.
Thanks very much, Graham. Yeah, I'm excited to be on the podcast. First time ever doing one of these, so it's quite new to me. My background was that I did business information systems first. I'm from Cork. I did business information systems there initially, and then I really enjoyed it. I loved what I was doing. I thought the work was interesting. You do a lot of innovative stuff. You think in a business mind, but then I wanted to do something else, and I decided that medicine was something challenging and interesting. I didn't know a lot about biology or chemistry or the human body at that point, so it was a huge field that I didn't have much knowledge on, and I thought it was a good challenge to go for. And the whole time while I was thinking about doing that, was that I would bring the two together at some point in the future. So that's where I would like to bring my career, and I think there's definitely more scope for doing that in 2025 in particular, with all of the new technologies that we have to build things quickly and in a way that people will find value from. So that's where I'm kind of getting to at this point.
Awesome. So tell us about your current project then, to Better Call.
Yeah, so Better Call, when I was doing my intern year, so when you're working as an intern, you kind of jump from being very theory based. I do think we had great experience in UCC getting into hospitals and seeing how they work and being on a team, but once you transition from the learning phase to the doing phase, you feel like you're very much on your own at times. There's always escalation paths that you can take to speak to someone more senior, but you are somewhat left to your own devices to make a decision. Or if you're reviewing a patient for the first time, if it's like 3 a.m. in the morning, there are fewer resources there for you to make decisions or comfortably make decisions. So that was kind of, if you bring it back to my past career, you'd always think about pain points that customers have or products that people might be interested in. So when I finished my intern year, I was kind of thinking, what did I experience over the past year that I felt could have been a bit better from the user point of view, and the user being an intern or a junior doctor trying to work on a quite in a fast-paced job with a lot of responsibility, but also a lot of work to get done. So I was trying to think of a way that you could improve the workflow for doctors, and there are resources out there. There are very good Irish resources like nchd.ie, which is made by a consultant, Eva O'Sullivan. It's an app-like website that you can use, and it is quite good. But I wanted to create something that was really fast and responsive, and I guess a bit more 2025 for doctors to use, and one that you could put information into and get your responses straight away. So when I finished my intern year, I decided to make bettercall.ie. I've spoken to you before about the name. I don't know why the name came, but it was some take on Better Call Saul, which is funny because I've never seen the series myself, but my family have seen it a lot. But it's kind of catchy, and I think it's easy to remember, so that's why I stuck with that. But the idea is that it's a quick reference tool that you can search a problem that you have while you're on call. Like if you have chest pain or a temperature spike, and you just want to confirm that what you're doing is the correct thing, and when to escalate and when to prescribe certain medications, or if there's any contraindications for patients, that you're aware of them and that you're doing things correctly. so that was the initial idea that I had for this site, and I started building it I think 2 weeks before we finished our intern year. So I wanted it to be there for the new interns when they came in.
Okay.
So I didn't actually finish it in time for them starting out, but I think around 2 weeks later, once they were 2 weeks into their rotation, I released it for the first time. And it's fairly simple. It has all of the calls that you go through, different consents that you might need to do for patients, surgical patients or other procedures, and common medications that you'll be prescribing for doctors. And it's, as I said before, like the idea is that it's fast and that you can get the information you want quickly. And it's not walled by anything. You don't need to sign in to use it. You can just log on you can just go onto the site and find the information that you need. And then as a side, there's a task manager. So if you're getting lots of calls during the night or during an on-call shift, you can add your tasks to it and prioritize those as you need. So
okay.
That was the first instance of the product, and I'm currently building a few more features now at the moment. So.
And have you, prior to launching it, did you test it with colleagues? Did you test it with friends? How was that whole?
Yeah, it's an interesting
process?
one. I didn't actually test it a whole pile. I shared it with a few friends who were coming out of intern year, finishing it, and not that people become cocky towards the end of their intern year, but I guess you've kind of dealt with most things at that point, so they probably weren't the most interested market for you testing it on. And as much as your friends encourage you and want you to do well, they're not always the best kind of user base to test it on. I used it quite a lot before I shared it. I think during those 4 weeks that I was building it, I was always testing it to make sure that it wasn't failing or that there wasn't something outside of the guidelines that would send someone awry. And I certainly wasn't creating anything that I was unsure of when I was posting it. So I wasn't going to share antimicrobial or antibiotic guidelines when they're quite site specific in terms of location. So I don't have that on my site at the moment because I'm not comfortable with that being there when it's not accurate. But when I was about to share it, I shared it via a post on Reddit with the Junior Doctors of Ireland forum, and I was really apprehensive because I was worried that people would come back and say this is wrong, that's wrong. But I had a bit of a disclaimer saying, look, I'm just one guy building this thing. I'm open to feedback, and on every topic that there is on the site, there's a feedback section where you can share your response to it if you did have a concern about it or if you wanted to add something to it. And when I did share it online, the feedback was extremely positive. I got, tons of comments saying how useful it was for people going into intern year, people saying that they wish they had it when they were an intern. And then I had feedback on the site from consultants and other doctors saying, this is great, but can you add this to make sure that people are aware of another aspect of the patient that you need to consider before prescribing a certain medication. So, So yeah, if that answers your question.
Yeah, absolutely. And sort of leads on to my next is that, as medicine evolves and as treatment of various injuries evolves, ideally the user base is going to also grow. What's your vision there in terms of managing that and in terms of managing that very constructive, useful clinical feedback in order to advance the service offering further?
Yeah, so I certainly want to increase the number of topics we cover on the site. I would like it to be something where, most of the topics at the moment are quite common things that you'll come across, but I would like to have these niche issues you might deal with on call that you've never approached before, that you can go onto the site and type in your query and it comes up, and you'll be relieved that you can go through a systematic approach to managing that situation. A lot of that will be based on feedback from users, so I'm kind of hungry for people to share on the site what they would like to see, because I'm keen to implement as much as we can in terms of those topics. But aside from that, what I would like the site to become is something that junior doctors rely on to improve their lives within work more than anything, because we face a lot of admin and red tape when we're dealing with people like HR it's quite slow to do simple tasks which you should be able to do like every day. Things like timesheets. At the end of a month, a lot of hospitals will have you fill out your timesheet for the past 28 days, and it's difficult to, I guess, document that in a quick way at the moment. I mean, I used to use my calendar app on my phone. At the end of a day, I'd kind of put in an event and say worked 8 to 8 or 8 to 6, and the reason why I worked overtime. But what I'm building at the moment is a simple clock in and clock out tool on the site, so that people can just set a timestamp or retrospectively set their times and enter details of the shift as to why they're maybe working overtime or whether it was an on-call shift or nights. And then at the end of the month, they can just print their PDF with all their hours or share it with whoever they need to. So that's just one use case, but there are plenty more that that doctors can benefit from this central site where they can manage their kind of work.
Okay, and is that the ultimate vision? Wherever possible, making the job of the doctor that little bit easier and that little bit more free.
Yeah, I think so. I guess I would suppose that most doctors want to spend most of their time focusing on their patients, whereas we live in a system where a lot of your time is spent doing things that are quite inefficient. It's difficult to get into the system, but it would be great if one day we could have access to information on our phones, or and there's obviously data issues there, but patient information on our phones where we can reliably look up queries that we want for patient specific data. Whereas at the moment, I'd say a junior doctor or an intern is logging onto a computer 20 times a day just to see blood results, waiting for blood results. You don't get alerted when they come in a lot of the time, and you have to continuously review and log in again and again just to get one piece of information that you're looking for. So I think there's a lot of value in streamlining things so that you can focus more on what your job actually should be, which is looking after patients.
Okay, and would you see that, and speaking to and the work that we do in MatchMedics, speaking to international doctors coming into Ireland, one of the big surprises, as advanced as the country may be, we're still heavily reliant on paper, and the idea of an electronic patient record is something of dreams for a lot of hospitals, and I know only a few private hospitals are moving in that direction. Where would you see this technically tech-heavy application fitting into a system that is currently paper-heavy?
Yeah, I'm equally as surprised as they are that we're so apparently backwards in our technological advancement in healthcare. I remember when I was first as a med student on one placement, but I think this was 2021. There was an intern dictating a letter using a cassette tape, and I walked in after having worked in technology before in these, I guess, state-of-the-art companies with all of the tech that you could ask for, coming to the HSE and seeing that there was someone using a cassette tape that I hadn't seen since.
And it's still done to this day too.
Potentially, I haven't seen it in a while, but there are really good technologies now, like T-Pro. I don't know if you've heard of T-Pro, but they're a dictation service where you use your phone to dictate letters, and then it gets transcribed either by AI or by a human, and then they create all the letters for you. That's great. And that's really integrated into the Irish system quite a lot. If a consultant or a team are looking for patients' information, they if they can't find their file, which is their physical paper file, if it's taking a while to get that, but you need information on a patient in ED, for instance, a lot of people will refer to T-Pro letters as a source of truth. Okay. So that is somewhat becoming its own EHR. In a way, but your question was around trying to get this type of thing into the
an old school system.
It's really difficult. I don't have an answer that would be, I guess, detailed enough, and I don't know enough about it in order to give an honest answer how that would happen. But I think we definitely need to consider more openness for phone applications and not being so reliant on old systems that we have contracts with that we probably won't let go of anytime soon. A lot of the services we use in hospitals are I guess, disparate systems that don't talk to each other, and it's quite difficult to think of an idea for a lot of people where we can bring those all together. So I think it needs new thinking more than anything in order to get away from the old system and into something that's more a composite source of information that we can interact with.
Sure. And I'm sure there'll be plenty of junior doctors and maybe more experienced doctors recalling times of being, trying to wrangle a free computer to be able to get access to that. So that piece I found quite fascinating in terms of what the capability that this application could have, where getting, notification, the simple things, right? The notification that a report has come back on a particular patient. All of these ultimately are feeding towards better patient outcomes, right? And quicker patient turnaround. How do you see, no doubt people will, in terms of receiving the initial idea as, quite positive and quite progressive, further down the line in terms of getting, clinical governance or clinical approval from heads of department, and how do you see, navigating that political climate?
Yeah, I think you definitely need. So I've worked on a couple of projects which haven't led to anything significant with a consultant in Cork, and I think you do need to get buy-in from someone who's quite senior on the clinical side. So you need to know a consultant who is willing to try something new, and then you need to get that product into a trial within a hospital.
Okay.
So that you have that precedence that, look, this trial was done, and if it's successful, great. You can see, look, users are really liking it. It's benefiting our wait times or our time to outcome in terms of what the product is actually doing to improve a service. And once you can do that, I think you're somewhat winning. You're getting to a place where, look, we've tried it. It's only been beneficial to us. Why would we not try and roll this out on a larger scale?
Okay.
It is very much a political issue more than a technical issue a lot of the time, I would say.
Yeah.
But at the same time, we do run on legacy systems quite a lot in most hospitals. That, it's the fear of breaking something that's currently working okay, or it's currently how we're doing it, is something I think people are holding on to, that fear.
Absolutely, yeah. And I guess with that, finding that right ambassador, finding that right person or champion to lead that on, have you thought, or have you found that person and have identified a location where you'd like to trial it on a one-site basis yet?
In terms of Better Call, is it?
Yeah.
So once I had shared it online, there were quite a lot of people using it, and I've got a pretty steady flow of users on the site, and these are just interns or SHOs going to the website. They're doing it independently, not associated with any organization, and I see that continuing. And I reached out to the head of the intern network, the clinical lead of the intern network for the South region, and they really liked it, but they were saying that they're not sure they can communicate on official lines to promote the application just yet. But they have spoken to the doctor I mentioned, Eva O'Sullivan, who created NCHD.ie, and he's going to share it on his website. So it seems like there is appetite there for when these types of innovations come in, and when it's beneficial to doctors and ultimately patients, that they're willing to, kind of jump around these kind of guardrails that try to keep things as they currently are. So
yeah,
I don't think it's difficult to find people who are interested in doing something new, especially if they have the right mindset for it.
Okay. And you mentioned previously your background, working a portion of your time in tech in the private industry. How have you found now, jump between public and private, in the hospital system, and now on the other side of it, trying to implement something which could quite, very quickly revolutionize how things are done and speed up patient processing times and help, whether it be junior doctors or, as we discussed before, new incoming doctors into the system to hit the ground running as quickly as possible. How have you found that, let's say, friction between the public and the private in terms of the pace that each of those opposing sectors take?
I think in the private sector, working in tech previously, it's always about trying to improve things, make things more efficient, bring a better product. So that's something that you strive for in the private sector. And then when you move over to the public sector, there isn't much appetite or incentive for it, because you're not driven by profit, you're not driven by increasing your users or anything like that. But when you think about the people working on the front lines, I don't mean to use that term in a kind of wartime sense, but
sure.
The doctors who are working in the hospitals, you do waste so much of your time doing things that aren't really at your license. So I think the way that I'm approaching this is that my user at the moment is the doctor. It's not the hospital, it's not the HSE, it's the individual who's working a 12-hour day and trying to make as much of that day as they can without wasting their time. So
okay.
I would like this for someday to be something that, I don't know, a body like the HSE would be interested in kind of acknowledging or encouraging use of, or even working with, but it would probably have to be something much bigger before that time comes,
Sure. And have you, and I appreciate it's early doors, but have you mapped out a potential pathway of getting there?
I think it would involve collaboration with clinicians,
Okay.
like senior clinicians who would be willing to provide their input and perhaps put their name on certain topics that we have on the site, just so that the HSE would be more keen to adopt it as a source of truth for other doctors who are going to use it, junior doctors. And then on the other side of things, from the admin point of view, these things like doing timesheets and clocking in and out, it's a much more efficient way to perform that task if you trust your user base, first of all, because timesheets can be changed to say whatever, and you have to verify that that's the case. So if you can do a really high fidelity and secure way of creating those timesheets, then it would be of value to someone like the HSE, and it would be much quicker to process all of these pay-related issues that you see currently in the HSE.
Yeah, and I guess plenty of learnings probably already throughout the journey of developing this first project, no doubt of many more that you're going to be working on in the future. What's the one thing that stood out to you so far that probably was a bit of a surprise?
From the technical point of view,
Yeah.
is it? I tried to build a few sites in years gone by. So I think in like 2021, I built a site that helped people get into medicine via the GAMSAT route, which is the graduate entry route. And I spent so much time trying to learn how to use this development framework, and it worked okay. It wasn't amazing. It was the site was fine, but the amount of effort I had to put into it was phenomenal compared to what you're able to do now with AI production. It's amazing. You can build really great apps with the help of AI. You do need to know how to set it up and how to
Sure.
work and prompt correctly, but it's just amazing how powerful your solutions are through the use of different AI services. On the train up to Dublin yesterday, I implemented a calendar system for this clock in and clock out and tracking your time, and that took me a few hours, whereas it would have taken I would imagine weeks to months only a few years ago. So that's one thing that has stuck out quite a lot. And the other thing is not kind of jumping the gun on things and releasing things too quickly, because a couple of weeks ago I had an issue on the site where, due to my lack of, or my semi-technical knowledge, I did something with one of the server settings, and my site was down for a few hours, and it was like firefighting trying to get it back up and making sure that it was live for users. But I communicated with the users online, and everyone was happy that I was letting them know why it was down, and that it would be back up shortly. I was worried that no one would come back after that, but everything was fine in the end.
Okay. And yeah, technology and the emergence of AI and the speed of AI, I think is great to be able to bring these type of ideas to life. But again, particularly within the medical space, the question of clinical governance comes, fast hitting. What's your thinking around how can you, like, who governs this clinically on the medical side?
Yeah, absolutely. So when I'm creating topics on the site, I'm using clinical guidelines as a reference.
Okay.
So I'm using Irish as much as I can if I can find the guidelines, but European other than that, and if not that, it's American. But there are other AI platforms for doctors. You might have heard of Open Evidence. It's quite a big startup / company now that its pitch is that you can search any clinical question and you'll get an answer based on research. And I have used it and it's quite good, but it's similar to something like ChatGPT, where when you prompt it, it starts writing out your answers for you, and you read it line by line. And I'm not sure we're quite ready for that yet. I think, as I would anyway, as an intern or a junior doctor, prefer to read a page of something that's kind of static, but we're sure about these guidelines.
Okay.
So when I'm creating things, the users will see static text on the site, and then if there is something you need to interact with to figure out a dosage or a plan for someone with an electrolyte abnormality, you put in your details, and then based on the current clinical guidelines, we'll give you a static page. Even though the content will be dynamic based on what you put in it, the outcome will be a static set of steps that you should take in order to deal with a certain situation.
Okay, so there's still, as you say, behavioral changes that need to come into play for people to really buy into the use of that within a medical setting.
Yeah, for sure. I have seen certain consultants even use AI to speed up their workflows. So they'll have certain templates that they made, and then they'll speak into their phone, and it'll write a letter based on what they've said to the AI, and it will print that letter and send it off to whoever needs to receive it. So there is a strong appetite among certain people to adopt this as soon as we can. And then I've seen other new implementations of electronic health records, which AI isn't even mentioned. And it's surprising that in 2025 these hospitals are implementing systems that are, in my view, something I haven't seen the likes of since I was probably 5 years old. So there's a wide chasm between what people are interested in implementing.
Sure, which is probably why it's quite challenging to pick one area, and probably quite exciting in another sense to perhaps get distracted by multiple things that you could be doing. So what you're doing here is very specific, isn't it?
For sure, yeah. I think that's one problem. It's a good problem to have, that your ability to develop something these days is so great with just one person or a few people that you need to decide what you're doing and probably focus on one thing at a time, because it's so easy to get sidetracked into something new. So that's one of the issues I'm facing at the moment is, I love that we're focusing on clinical topics. That's something that will continue, and that's our user base is using that mainly. We have the task management system where people can go through their jobs and tick them off and see how many they've done in a day and things like that. And then the next one is that calendar system. But after that, I need to decide what will be the next feature that we're going to focus on, and make sure that it's relevant to our users. So
it's really help in your pocket. That's
exactly
that's what you're looking for.
Yeah, 100%.
Okay. And for anyone who hasn't come across it before, if you had to give them one reason why they should try it and why it will be useful for them, what would you say?
Yeah, so I think it's, as a junior doctor, you will come across things that you haven't seen before, and it's important not to be overconfident in what you're doing. When you make decisions, you should be confident that the decision you're making is safe and appropriate for the situation you're facing. So and also from a junior point of view, it's quite annoying when you go to your registrar and say, I've got a patient with X, what do I do? And you don't have all of the details you should be bringing to them in order to get the correct response.
Okay.
So if you're omitting details when you're trying to present a patient to someone, you're kind of kicking yourself that you hadn't thought to ask this question or do this investigation before escalating. So it's it's a tool that reassures you that what you've done so far is appropriate, and that what you will do is the right thing to do for your next step. So I think it's kind of giving you that reassurance that you're practicing appropriately.
Okay. And if we can come back to Better Call in a bit, but if we can take a slight detour, and that is to the space of the new emerging trend of that portfolio career. So it's a typically younger doctor who might still be practicing clinically but not full time, and looking to use their clinical expertise in a side direction. How you're sort of living that right now. How do you see that trend growing amongst former colleagues and friends, and where do you see that going in time?
Yeah, I see a lot of doctors who would like to do something different, or to maybe be a bit entrepreneurial or innovative. And I think the traditional view is that you do your training, you become a consultant, and that's kind of it. But especially with the emergence of graduate entry medicine, there are people who are coming into the field with different backgrounds. So you have experience in something else, and then you think, look, maybe it'd be nice to marry those two things together.
Sure.
And in my instance, where technology is my background, it's very much relevant to medicine. There's a lot of improvements and innovations that we need. So I think that's quite appropriate. And for other people who want to develop a portfolio career in medicine, I think it is difficult, because your training is also quite tough most of the time. If you're training to become a specialist in anything, you are going to devote most of your time to that. And consultants who have advised me have said, look, you are better off getting your training done and completing that. So I think the most risk-averse approach is to just continue with your training, get your consultant post, and then you can think about that portfolio career.
Okay.
But in my instance, as much as I would like to be a specialist someday, I do see that there are a lot of barriers to trying to marry those two things together and have something a bit broader. So I don't have much advice on the prospect of doing a portfolio career, because it can be quite risky.
Sure.
But it's something I need to figure out myself.
Okay. And lastly, before we wrap up, for you, where do you ultimately, and again, I appreciate the website has only recently been launched and you have a few other ideas in development. Where do you ultimately, where's the goal for Better Call? Where's the goal for what you're hopefully developing in the future?
Yeah, so I really do love working as a doctor. Like it's a great career. It's a great job to have, and that is something I don't want to let go of. And I think it is something I should pursue. From the Better Call side of things, or the technology side of things, it's really hard to ignore the need for improvement in our systems and the need for better technology that we can certainly bring these days. So I think it'll be a very difficult task to choose one or the other. So I would like to bring both of them, both being a doctor and working in technology, through my career with me, and build things that ultimately doctors and patients will benefit from.
Awesome. Great. Anything else you'd like to add? Any takeaway you want to give to people about Better Call before we finish up today?
I suppose if you are using it at the moment, I really appreciate our user base. People are coming back every day, so it's something that I really value, and it's great to see on the analytics that our user base, we have about 70% of our users are coming back from after having visited previously, and then 30% are new people coming on every day, and that's without any promotion. So I'm very grateful to everyone who has used it so far, and just if you would like to sign up to it and join as a user, soon enough we'll have more content and more features that hopefully you'll benefit from.
I'm sure any other feature that will take away the headache of admin or just life admin and doctor admin will certainly be very welcome features.
Absolutely.
Great stuff. Thanks for coming on.
It's been a lot of fun.